Society that I just made a week before, Will Christensen. He was a John Birch Society section leader on the program. And he was talking, and I called in to talk with him, and I started talking for a little bit with him, and he says, Bliss, there seems to be a word you can't seem to say. What is that word, Bliss? What's that word you don't seem to be able to spit out? You're kind of dancing around it. What is that word? And I said, you mean conspiracy? And he says, that's the word. Why are you having trouble saying that? And I said, well, it's very unpopular to believe in it. And he says, well, spit it out and say it. You're a member of the John Birch Society now. Get some guts, talk about it. And what is a conspiracy, Bliss? And why do you believe in it? So there I was on the air, somebody who hardly ever had been on a radio show in my life, suddenly talking about a subject that I knew all my neighbors would go. And so what is the definition of a conspiracy? Very, very simple. Two or more people meeting privately to discuss in private, or plan or plot in private, or conspire together in private to do something that's arguably evil. Okay? So if Jack and I got together tomorrow night and we sat down in private and we planned a bank robbery for Nampa, that would be meeting in private, two or more people, plotting to do something that's arguably evil. We would be conspirators in a conspiracy. But if Dale Pierce and I got together and we sat down in secret and we planned a birthday party for Steve Pugmire, we could be planning in private, but it's not something that's arguably evil. So now all we're doing is networking, we're planning together, but we're not plotting and conspiring to do something evil. So how many in here believe in conspiracy? Okay. Everybody, right? We see it, and we see it on TV all the time. The most popular shows right now on, what's that network that's HBO? The guy just died. It's been all over the media, the star of The Sopranos. Well, what's The Sopranos about? It's about an international, it's a transcontinental, transgenerational conspiracy called Cosa Nostra, the Mafia. Right? And the Mafia likes to corrupt governments because it can utilize corrupt judges, corrupt police, corrupt senators, all that kind of stuff. So really people know there's conspiracies, even political conspiracies.
A conspiracy is not a secret, it's a crime.
It's a crime. But it usually starts out secret because they want to be secret, because they don't want to be caught doing their crime. I'm going to recommend a movie to you. Really love this movie. It's called The Wannsee Conference. No. It's called The Wannsee Conspiracy. W-A-N-S-E-E. Wannsee Conspiracy. I rented it once at Blockbuster Videos years ago. There were two versions. One was made in America and one was made in Europe. And the European one was all in German, the whole thing. So you had to read the subtitles in English if you didn't speak German. But the American one, of course, is all in English.
What was that again?
Wannsee Conference, W-A-N-S-E-E. Wannsee. I'm sorry, Wannsee Conspiracy. Well, what it's about is, it's the true story from the notes of the Wannsee Conference conspiracy. And so it's a reenactment of this conference held in a suburb of Berlin called Wannsee. And it was held in a home that had been confiscated from a rich Jewish family. And the people that were holding the conference were the top officials in the National Socialist Workers' Party dominated government, the Nazi government of Germany. And the purpose of the conference was to plan what they called the final solution, to murder every Jew in Europe. They were going to do it legally. They had an entire plan on how they would set up the legal mechanisms for capturing and imprisoning and murdering every Jewish man, woman, and children on the continent. Now, for most of us, that would be arguably evil, to conspire together to use misuse the power of government to murder civilians and confiscate their properties. But to these Nazis, it was the right thing to do. It was the thing to do. It was a good thing. And it's a fascinating movie to watch them discuss it and justify the mass murder of millions of people. Fascinating movie. But it is a government conspiracy. Now, the news media today wants you to believe that there is no such thing as conspiracy within governments. What a lie. And why do they want you to believe that? Because most of those that are in the controlled establishment media are covering for their friends in the conspiratorial apparatus that seeks to dominate the planet with a world government, the United Nations. Now, so this is one of the things we're known for in the John Birch Society. And we've written many books about it and made many, many films. And given many talks and written hundreds of articles about it. And we could probably fill, from here to there with our evidence in a room, because we already did. It's down the basement of our headquarters. In fact, the room is about like this, and it's full of files. And so we have a lot of evidence on this, but we boil it down into books. Now, this is a 1992 book, Global Tyranny, Step by Step, the United Nations and the Emerging New World Order. This was written by an Idahoan, William F. Jasper. I just want to read one little quote out of the whole book. Because Bill Jasper came back from the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in July 1992 and published this book. All right? And that was UNCED, United Nations Environmental Conference, United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, but it was commonly known as the Earth Summit. 30,000 leaders and environmentalists from all over the world gathered to this summit in Rio de Janeiro. And they produced something from that summit, and Bill Jasper was about the first reporter in America to bring that home to America. There was a 1,100-page document that he brought home to study and write about and warn America about. And I have an abridged edition of 300 pages called Agenda 21. Okay, this was 1992. 22 years ago, the John Birch Society began to warn America about Agenda 21. It's all the craze right now. Everywhere you go, everybody's talking about Agenda 21 and how dangerous it is to our property rights and our local governments and so on. But since 1992, we've been trying to awaken the people of America to this United Nations danger inside our own country. Well, this is the quote I wanted to read you. This is from the Council of the Club of Rome in 1991, and this is an internationalist elitist group that meets in Rome that is made up of European elites, governmental officials, and others. And this is what was said: in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. Okay. Well, so Bill published this book about the United Nations, and he had chapter 7 is called The Global Green Regime. And in this, he told about how the frightening boogeyman of global warming, and acid rain, and ozone depletion, and deforestation, and pollution, and water pollution, and a dozen other things were being used as tools to frighten human beings into acquiescing to governmental growth in order to protect them from these frightening happenings. Now, I'm not saying there's no pollution or that there aren't environmental problems, What I'm saying is, whether real or imagined, they're utilized by the UN as a method of growing UN power. And they're utilized by our own government in the same way. Now, I was going to bring tonight, and I'm just not better, but I've got a big, thick booklet that's the Climate Change Treaty. And it's a horrible document to read because it's all about transferring your wealth to other countries. And that's part of the scam of all this, is being able to transfer developed countries' wealth to third world countries and to third world dictatorships and potentates, help them. But anyway, a lot of people say, well, this just isn't the case. The John Birch Society needs to take its meds. They got to take their tinfoil hat off because this is crazy to think that there's a conspiratorial drive for a world government. I love to ask them, well, have you read our book, this one, my parrot chewed up, Inside the United Nations, a critical look at the UN by Dr. Steve Bonta. And of course, 99% of the people I asked that who don't believe there's a problem with the UN have never read the book. It's a very short little pocket book. Dr. Bonta could write a big, thick one, but he was asked to write a pocket book so that people would read it, because people don't want to read an 800-page book anymore. They want a 30-second soundbite to tell them what's going on. And that's why we've started producing little booklets.
Excuse me. I'm curious, are people more inclined to watch videos?
Yeah, that's true too. So we're producing little booklets like this 30-page booklet, UN Agenda, Agenda 21 of the UN. And yes, that's another thing. You're absolutely right. We've been producing DVDs, like this dollar DVD, Agenda 21, How Will It Affect You? And we put them on YouTube, and we put them on our own websites as well, so that people have these as tools to educate themselves and educate others. So that's something else the John Birch Society is known for, is being an educational organization. Because that's what we work with, because we say truth is our only weapon, okay? And education is how we wield that truth, through educational activities. I want to give you an example about it. How many of you have heard of Law of the Sea Treaty? Okay, a lot of them. Okay, this is a United Nations treaty for the United Nations to take jurisdiction over 90% of the world's water, 70% of the world's surface, almost 70% of the world's air territory, most of the mining and oil capabilities on the planet, because they would take over all the oceans of the planet and all the bodies of water, anything navigable, the Great Lakes. Okay? And they create their own seabed authority, and then they can tax if you use it. They can ask you to get their licenses and permits to use it for fishing, for mining, for oil, drilling, for movement upon the waters, for flying over it. Everything can have a tax on it for the UN so that they can protect our oceans for us. But that makes them a de facto world government because they'd have 70% of the Earth's surface. They'd be the biggest government on Earth, wouldn't they? Well, and of course, we've been warning about that. And what we use to warn is like reprinted articles, DVDs. Here's another one. This is on Agenda 21, another reprinted article. So we're known for our magazine, The New American, because it's a very credible magazine. The research in it's really good. It's thematic. Every 2 weeks when it comes out, it has a theme. I mentioned that we're known for being ahead of the curve. I remember going into a radio station in Salt Lake City in, I think it was 2004, towards the end. And I sat down with the station manager and I said to him, I want to talk to you about something. And so I talked to him about the free trade area of the Americas. A free trade bill that was going to come before the Senate soon for ratification. There was a bill that would try to unite 35 nations in this hemisphere in one entity, much like the European Common Market, on its way towards an entity much like the European Union. And as I talked to him about it, he said, Bliss, I've been reading your magazine. I know about this. And he says, what do you want to do? And I told him what I wanted to do. We wanted to have these ads on the radio so people in Salt Lake City would start hearing about this. And I wanted to bring a guest speaker to town to talk about this, and maybe he could have him as a guest on their radio station. And he said, sure, we'll do that. And he says, how are you gonna pay for this? You know, and I says, well, I've got my CPA, who's a John Birch Society chapter leader, Hans Anderson, and he says that he'll do $500 worth of work for you for free to pay for it. And he said, Bliss, he's our CPA. And he's done so much good for us. I would never take a dime from him. I would never think of taking a dime from him. He says, and you Birchers have been doing the heavy lifting for years. He says, let me tell you what I'll do. How would you like it if I played that ad twice an hour for a week? And then I'll increase that and increase it from September to January. How would that be? And I'll play it 500 or 600, 800 times for you for free. Would that be okay? I said, are you kidding me? Of course. You know, and he says, well, that's what we're going to do because it's time for us to pick up the slack and do something besides letting you guys do all the heavy lifting. We'll get this known. I says, good, because we got a bill we're going to bring before the Utah State Legislature, a resolution to tell Congress to not pass the free trade area of the Americas. And we're doing this in states all over the country. We're appealing to the legislatures to appeal to the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, we got 11 state legislatures to pass that resolution, and they killed the free trade area of the Americas. That demand from legislatures and from the people across this country helped kill it. And let me tell you, when nobody was talking about the FTAA in Utah, after all these advertisements and all of these speakers came and everything, it was a topic of discussion all over Utah, in the political parties and everywhere. And that's how we operate. We bring the information out. What else are we known for?